Cato Middle School once again, and this afternoon we're working with Maya. And Maya, are you in 7th or 8th grade?
7th.
7th grade. So you will be attending Cato next year.
Yep.
Because a lot of the other folks that we've been working with from Cato are already ready for high school. Do you think you're ready for high school?
No.
Not yet?
No.
Do you have any idea where you'll be attending, though, when you do go?
Highland.
Highland. All right. Well, let's work on a problem right now. How do you like percents?
They're good.
They're good, aren't you? You love them, right? What's the best percent?
100.
100%, right? It's always good to have all of something, right?
Yes.
Okay, especially on a test or a grade. Okay. So we're going to do a percent problem. You write down anything you think you need to know on this problem. Okay? The experimental probability of seeing a hawk. Have you ever seen a hawk?
No.
Okay, we'll just
I
imagine
don't really
one
know
right
birds.
now. We'll go into the science section later on. At the viewing center on any given day is 20%.
To see one?
To see one. So you have a 20% probability of seeing a hawk. All right. If you visit 240 days, on about how many days do you think you would see a hawk?
Okay,
So you have a 20% chance of seeing a hawk on any day.
Okay.
If you go for 240 days, how many times do you think, what's the probability that you would see a hawk?
240 days?
240 days. Now, what I'd like you to do is come over here and we're going to write down some options that we have. Okay? We have some different days, all right? A, 24 days. B, 48 days. C, 96 days. And D, 192 days. Now, what I'd like you to do is before we even get started on this, just take a look at the options that are available. And if you have a 20% chance of seeing a hawk and you go 240 days, what do you estimate or think the answer might be right now without even starting the problem?
I think it'd probably be 70% to see one.
Well, how many days do you think you would see one? Out of the 240 days, how many days do you think you would see one if your probability is 20%?
192.
192?
Yeah.
If you're only going for 240 days, think about this. If you're going for 240 days and you could see a hawk on 120 days, what percent would that be?
Can you repeat it?
Okay, out of the 240, if we went and we saw a hawk 120 days out of the 240, how many days did we see him?
120.
So that's half of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is 50%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going 240 days, and we don't want 50%. What percent do we want?
100%.
Well, we want
20%.
20%, right? So is 20% going to be more or less than that?
Less.
Less than that. So what do you think the 192 is going to be?
More.
It's more, isn't it? So we don't even want to consider that one, right? So that's one way that you can kind of estimate to kind of start off with the problem. Okay? So you want 20% of the 240 days. So how would you get 20% of 240?
You would divide. You would change it to a decimal, and then you would divide.
Well, let's see how that works.
It's been a while. Okay.
You want 20% of 240.
Yes.
So 20%, how would you write 20% as a
Oh, a
decimal?
proportion.
Well, you could. How would you write this mathematical sentence? How would you write 20% as a decimal?
0.2.
Okay, go ahead, 0.20. Now, do you know what of means?
Yes, multiply.
Multiply, so multiply. So we're looking for 20% of what?
of 240.
Perfect, 240. So now are we doing any dividing?
No,
Or what are we doing?
we're multiplying.
Multiplying, all right? Go ahead. So you think it's 480?
Yeah. Well, no.
Okay, so looking at, because you know it's one of those options. So what do you think happened?
Oh, I didn't move the decimal. I moved the decimal only once when I.
So what does it need to be?
It needs to be 40.
It's 48, isn't it?
Yeah.
There you go. So why don't you go ahead and circle what the correct answer is, just so I can make sure you've got it, okay? Now here's another way to think of it, all right? 10% of 240 is 24, okay? Does that make sense to you? 10% of 240 is 20, like what's 10% of 100?
10.
10, right? So 10% of 240 is 24. So if we want 20%, we're going to double the 24. So what do we get if we double 24?
48.
48, and that's what you came up with anyway, right? So let's take a listen to the problem one more time. The experimental probability of seeing a hawk on any given day is 20%. If you visit 240 days, how many days can you expect to see a hawk?
48.
48 days. Maya, thank you for helping out.
You're welcome.